people can get very entrenched in an opinion, and that's a big mistake as a punter.
You'll have a fair idea on the day, you know, if this horse is fancied.
Factor Fowl shouldn't be running the Gold Cup.
Let Cheltenham unfold.
Hello and welcome to My Cheltenham, brought to you by BOYLE Sports, as we look forward to the Cheltenham Festival in the company of names and personalities who have their own angles, opinions and hopes and dreams about the festival. This time we're going to be pitching punter versus bookmaker, both sides of the fence, both having strong opinions, digging their heels in, taking stances and hoping neither one gets it more wrong than they do. In terms of the panel, for this episode, to my left is Cheltenham man, pro punter Moray Smith, who's had plenty of profits, plenty of memories from the Cheltenham Festival, and hoping for a few more this year.
Plenty of profits, plenty of highs, plenty of lows, all the drama you'd expect. Hoping to take some money off people like your man opposite me this year would be nice.
Absolutely, and the man opposite you, to my right, representing BOYLE Sports, is Barry Doyle. Again, the bookies angle, the Irish angle as well, coming over here, taking all our races. Yeah, how are you feeling?
Can't wait for it. I suppose it all comes down to Cheltenham, doesn't it? No matter what side of the county you're on. Obviously, Murray has wrote a book about Cheltenham. We look forward to delving into it. And I suppose competition, you mentioned, that's the big word, whether it's Ireland versus the UK in the Presbytery Cup or bookie versus punter. And I think we all have an opinion, and that's, from my perspective, the message here today. We all have opinions.
Absolutely. In terms of how you get those opinions, of course, and how good those opinions are, let's just introduce you for a little bit, Murray, because when did your obsession with Cheltenham start, and when did you start to turn that obsession into something that made it pay?
Always been a huge fan of Cheltenham since I've watched jump racing as a boy to a young man. I started pro punting, I guess, in about the year 2007. Up until that date, I used to actually go to the Cheltenham Festival. But when I started taking the punting seriously, it's a very busy time of year for me. So I haven't been since then. But I just enjoy watching it on telly now.
And at that point, was it a conscious decision, or did you just thought, you know what, I think I've got an edge here, I think I've got an angle, and it just snowballed from there?
What happened was, I spent a year monitoring all my bets, trying to work out if I had an edge, because I did a lot of betting. Looked at all the results, flat racing, jump racing, split it by handicap, non-handicap. Ended up sort of looking so deeply into it that I missed the obvious.
Yeah.
And the obvious was I was winning money at anti-post racing. Didn't matter if it was hurdles, chases or whatever, particularly the Cheltenham Festival and the Grand National.
So your edge was seeing things in advance before other people had missed the ricks, as it were?
I think so. Seeing things in advance, keeping on top of the information, just generally having a feel for what prices horses should be a long way out from the race, and how they would target, and how the trainer may target their other horses accordingly. Just seemed to have an eye for that sort of thing. And so decided that's literally all I would do. So, for example, the DRF, I watched all the racing. I think I had one bet. Everything was with a view to Cheltenham. Yeah. And it's pretty much the same for the racing during the year. I've been on the big handicaps, the big races. But generally it's all how does that affect the champion hurdle market and so on. Yeah. And I feel by concentrating so completely on that, I have an edge over other people like Barry. You've got to spread himself thin, price up markets, daily markets and so on. I can just hone in on one thing. Yeah.
And in terms of from a bookie's perspective, you know, someone like Murray is, how do you deal with someone like Murray who you know what they're good at, you know when they place a bet, when they come into a shop, when they open an account or whatever, you go, okay, there's something here. How often does that happen, and how do you deal with it?
Murray's talking about specialising in Cheltenham, so obviously that's what we're building up to the festival itself. So very different to the day-to-day stuff. From a BOYLE Sports perspective, the message heading up into the Cheltenham Festival, Murray's talking about research, analysis, creating his own idea what the prices should be. That's what BOYLE Sports are encouraging I suppose punters to do, is to actually do the research, form strong opinions and back themselves. And how do BOYLE Sports deal with that? I mean, encouraging people, for example, heading into the festival, one of the messages is money back on all losers in the first race in every day of the festival itself. So that's an offer that we're trying to give the punter a good experience and keep them there for the week. And everyone, no matter what side of the counter you're on, I think making a book is the idea, and you know, let Cheltenham unfold.
Just for a second there, Moray, I thought you was going to say money back on all losers, and I think we should just stop the programme there. Job done. That's a great offer.
Is that capped presumably at a tenner or something, Barry?
I'll have to go back to HQ with that. I think it is money back all losers in the first race in every day of the festival. So it's a good offer, I suppose, to get punters in the door and you know, keep the custom throughout the week from a Boyle Sports perspective. But I think competition. One of the questions just in advance of the show was, you know, about bookie versus punter. Are they enemies, for example? I personally don't see it that way. I have strong opinions myself. I think everybody who's interested in racing, that's where it begins, is having an interest and obviously forming an opinion. So
I feel like you might have a slightly different angle on that. Do you feel like you're...
I would never call Barry my enemy.
to his face? This is what I mean. Very different feel, I think. Do you have...
No, of course I don't see him as enemy. As I was telling you earlier, I have actually done some work on Barry's side of the fence, making markets on the spread betting side. So I do see it from both sides.
So is that where you... Because again, in terms of when you say about finding horses at the wrong price, in that case, you have to have a rough idea of what the right price should be. You know, you have to have the skills that the bookmakers are using.
The skills are the same, aren't they?
Yeah.
Pretty much. We're just coming from different... The bit that really hit home to me when I tried doing Barry's side of things, you can produce a whole sheet of A4 with 25 prices on it. Perfect. One mistake, that's where the money goes. And you get no reward for your 24 correct prices because nobody touches them, but you get filled in on the other one. And that sort of showed me just how tough the job is.
Yeah. It's to a certain extent, again, that's a similar issue that you're facing because, again, you could have, you know, if you stake incorrectly, if you have, I don't know, multiples or accumulators where one lets you down or however you play it, you have to be, you can be right a lot but still come out on the wrong side.
Certainly an accumulator, one mistake will sink the ship, won't it?
Yeah. When do you start thinking about Cheltenham, or maybe the question should be, do you stop thinking about Cheltenham?
I started thinking about this year's Cheltenham when they crossed the line at the end of the Martin Pipe last year.
And what were your thoughts? Because sometimes they're the best thoughts, aren't they? That aren't filtered.
Having done this a long time, and you know, Barry and his lot are very harsh with the prices these days, I would say. But the time when we can catch them with their pants down is very, very early. Particularly if you've got the time to bet, rather than wait to the end of the festival, you can bet during this festival because there'll be prices up for the Queen Mother as soon as this one finishes, as soon as the Arkle finishes. That's where the mistakes will be. And from my point of view, the good part about that is the bookies are so busy, you know, that we could have a nice flashy winner in the Arkle. One firm's 6-1, another firm's 3-1. That 6-1 will probably stay for a while because they're so busy with the rest of the day at Cheltenham doing other stuff, and you know, they'll leave that 6-1 hanging, and you can perhaps get plenty of money on.
And also punters, to a certain extent, like you said, are immediately swayed to the next big thing, and that this horse could progress from this division to that division, whereas you might have a horse who's already in that division and go, hang on a minute, mate, you know, I'm only 7, I'll be back next year. So is there a bit of that as well, because they often, you know, people will say the best place to start with Cheltenham is last year's Cheltenham.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, people always want to support the bright, new, shiny thing, don't they? So what's important as a punter is to be quite dispassionate and try and put a figure. I'm very much a figures man with how I do my betting. Is put a figure on the performance of that Arkle winner. You know, you should know already the figures for the current crop of 2-mile chasers. You'll have more data to go on the next day when the champion chases run. But you can immediately say, right, that's got a figure of 170. Where's that likely to be next year? Add £10 on as it moves into open company. That's going to be a cracking good chance of winning next year's Queen Mother. You know, it should be 5-2, not 5-1, and bet accordingly. But yeah, it's important, I find, to try and quantify the performance rather than just visually say, wow, that was impressive. You know, you've got to actually be cold and hard and
benchmark it.
Yeah.
And what about you? When are you Cheltenham as well for all year round?
I'm always watching Cheltenham. Similar to similar to Moray, but I suppose speaking to the Boyle Sports traders, you know, the Martin pipe you mentioned, as soon as they cross the line, I mean, the focus is on that. And, you know, we're talking about having an edge, for example, no matter what side you're on, after the Martin pipe. That is probably, does make sense to hear you say that, you know, that's maybe the time that you might find an angle, or maybe a decent price about a horse that maybe everyone might not have seen. So nice to know, Murray, you're on it early. But I think just overall, I think that the 4 weeks leading up to the festival, that's when Boyle Sports, the bookmaker, are on high alert. You know, the multiple entries for races is probably a big challenge at the moment. Lossiemouth, a good example at the moment. I mean, something I'd love to see her run the Champion Hurdle, but it's probably not going to happen. I mean, she's doubly, she's going to have an entry obviously in the mares and the Champion Hurdle. Similar with Factor File. I mean, how do you read that this season? And I think not only from a bookmaker perspective, but also from a punter perspective, they're the races that probably nobody is willing to have a bet in at the moment, because you know, we just don't know the horse that are doubly entered up. I mean, that is a big challenge, whether you're a bookmaker or a punter.
But it's funny you say about being dispassionate about it, because I do feel Lossiemouth's a great example of everyone saying what they want to happen rather than what might happen. And I guess are there angles in there, you know, in terms of like your idea of a Cheltenham Festival? Like I said, when we have, you know, there's podcasts, we're recording, there's social media, there's blogs, there are so many opinions now.
Yeah.
That one opinion can snowball into almost a consensus. Yeah. And I guess part of your job must be to...
Oh, I love seeing that, because you can make money by going against it. Example at the moment is Factor File's winning the Irish Gold Cup. Everyone's clamouring for Factor File to run in the Gold Cup. It's very much like the purists are saying Lossiemouth has to run in the Champion Hurdle. It doesn't matter that she's a 2.5 miler. She has to run in it's the important race. Factor File wins the Irish Gold Cup. He has to run. If not, the owner's not sporting. Yeah. You know, what are they playing at? This Ryanair's rubbish and so on. Factor File shouldn't be running in the Gold Cup. It should be running in the Ryanair's race. The race it will win, because it's not going to stay the Gold Cup trip. That's my opinion. Now, I might be wrong. It may come up the hill and put 20 lengths on the field. But so many people are saying it has to run in the Gold Cup, and I believe it's going to go off favourite if it does get supplemented. Not for me at all.
The countdown to Cheltenham is on, and there's only one destination. Sign up at Boyle Sports and you'll get your money back as a free bet if your horse loses in the first race every single day of the festival. Please gamble responsibly, and T&Cs, of course, do apply. One thing that could happen at Cheltenham, out of everything, whether it's a trainer, whether it's a jockey, whether it's a horse powering up the hill, or what do you want to... You can have one thing. You can have one wish.
That'd be one of the wishes, that the championship.
You can have one, Barry. You're having one. I'm giving you one. You can. I'm a very strict genie, Barry.
Okay, fair enough. I'd love to see Lossiemouth run the Champion Hurdle. I'd love to see her get her shot, because I was a big believer in her last year, and she ran in the mares. And I mean, if she'd run an hour previous, or was it 40 minutes previous, she would have been a Champion Hurdle winner. I mean, if you're not in, you can't win, and getting £7, I think she's a proper one.
Albeit, given what happened in the Champion Hurdle, she'd run an hour. I mean. Who knows what would have gone on? Again, I've only got two wishes in the lamp. Barry's has one.
Okay.
What's your wish?
Mine's a bit more specific and detailed. I don't know how.
No, go for it. Yeah, no rush. Yeah.
Sorted for this sort of thing. I think I'm hanging my hat on this Factor File this year, and my article in the Racing Post this week is going to be about it. What I would like to see is JP McManus clutching the Ryanair trophy after Factor File has done exactly what he did last year, barely able to get the words out, choking with the emotion, thanking me for the advice. And he said he read the article, changed his opinion. I ran him in the Ryanair because of what Murray said. I wouldn't be here without him. I think that would probably do me.
That's a good wish.
Yeah. Can you do that?
Do you? I don't. It's again. I am quite an erratic genie in terms of results. I'll give you the wishes, but whether I can. I'm one of those genies who you don't know how it's going to unfold.
Right, okay.
It turns out that maybe I'll grant your wish, but all your bets avoided. Ooh, so you never know. You never know what's going to happen. Am I reading between the lines suggesting that you might have a few tickets on Factor 5 with the right now?
I full disclosure.
Yeah, it does. does sound a bit like that.
Full disclosure, I have several tickets on Fact to File for the Ryanair, and I also put it up in my article as a bet on there. So I do. My pocket is egging me on as much as anything, but it's an opinion based on.
Are you stubborn or would you change?
Oh no, I'll change.
Yeah.
I go where the money goes. Where it'll make me money, I'm not proud. I don't stick to an opinion. I mean that's something we've spoken about before, that people can get very entrenched in an opinion,
Yeah.
and that's a big mistake as a punter. Because people do tend to line up on sides, don't they? And you chuck mud at each other, and it will stay, it won't stay. If you see a bit of evidence that you hadn't considered previously, or something points something out, you shouldn't be too proud to say, actually, you're right, I didn't think of that. I'm on your team now,
You write an article, people say, oh, you said this a month ago.
Yeah, no,
you don't
yeah.
write an article, people don't go, you had that thought a month ago, Marie, now
No.
you've changed your mind. So
Yeah.
how do you square that in terms of, putting things into print or even now onto film, and then going, you know what, I did change my mind.
You have to be willing to be wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's right all the time, obviously. It's a game of opinions. And I think what people want to read, what people want to hear in Barry's podcast and so on, is they want opinions. They don't want someone reciting the form book and saying, well, he might stay. If he does stay, he'll win. If he doesn't, people know that already. They want someone who's prepared to be wrong and says, it won't stay, and here's why. Because then you've got something interesting, something to talk about, haven't you? So I think it's important with the articles and so on that I do give an opinion and make it interesting, to start a conversation or whatever. And back to Fact to File, I make the point in this week's article about how I think that horse exhibits speed endurance rather than stamina, which are two, if you do any running as I used to do, they're two separate things.
Yeah.
Stamina has a hard genetic limit. It's not getting more stamina because it's got older. That's a fallacy. People that think that. You're born with a certain amount of stamina, fast twitch, slow twitch ratios, and that's your stamina. Fact to File hasn't got more stamina than it had as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old. It's exactly the same. It's got slower, so it needs to go up in trip, but it's not magically going to have the stamina to come up the hill.
Okay.
What
It's
about
speed
him,
endurance,
what about him
point and go.
settling better this year?
Well,
That'll
he's-
give him a chance of.
I don't think he's ever been that bad at settling. His best run arguably was the Ryanair up until the Irish Gold Cup, just basically point and go. He doesn't have to go. If something wants to go quicker, he'll go in, but he just sets off and goes. It's when you start holding him back, interfering with him a bit, trying to settle him in behind, you lose that, and that is his chief weapon. So the only way he can win a Gold Cup, in my mind, is you point and go. And if he's an absolute generational freak that can exhibit speed endurance for 3.25 miles, going up the Cheltenham Hill twice, I take my hat off to him.
The countdown to Cheltenham is firmly on, and there's only one destination. Sign up with BOYLE Sports, and when you bet 10, you'll get 50 in free bets before the greatest show on turf. Sign up right now. Bearing in mind, obviously, you're talking about taking new information and changing your mind about it. Obviously, a horse getting older, or a horse putting in a performance where you didn't think, I didn't think they would do that. What seems to have changed for Cheltenham in particular over the past few years is where that information comes from. And in particular, the DRF. I mean, it feels like, again, we have different... Cheltenham evolves every 5, maybe 10 years. And the way horses go into the festival now...
Yeah, that's definitely changed.
It's very
different.
different.
The board, like one run going to an Arkle, I mean, that's unheard of.
But what do you make about the DRF in terms of that transformation? How has Cheltenham changed on, based on how the run up and how the profile of the horses and in particular like you said, that Irish dominance how much has that come from the DRF and making those races as competitive as they are?
BOYLE Sports making a book, speaking yesterday to the lads, I mean, there's a lot more emphasis now on the trials. So, for example, the Dublin Racing Festival and Cheltenham Trials Day. In the UK, I think there's maybe a little bit more of an opportunity to duck and dive. La Lamba, to be fair, would have been odds against to run in the Game of Spurred, looking at the forecast earlier on in the week. So hats off to Nicky, 2 runs going in, taking on the horses who've had 20 plus runs over Fences, Saint Segal. But I think generally speaking, there's a lot more emphasis, if you're looking at the book and the markets, no matter what side, whether you're punting, whether you're laying, there's a lot more emphasis now on the big trials. But interestingly, the Dublin Racing Festival, I read a stat that was it 2 winners at the Dublin Racing Festival last season, actually followed up at the festival. I'm not sure was that the grade 1s, but it's just interesting to see how many you can get beaten at the Dublin Racing Festival. Ballyfad is a horse I like for the Turners. He was beaten by Talk the Talk, who's a really talented horse. And I mean, could we see Ballyfad running over 2.5 at Cheltenham? So we saw it with Gaelic Warrior in the past as well, beaten at the Dublin Racing Festival time and time again.
You mentioned Marine National,
so you don't
Jasmine
necessarily
DeVoe
have to
last year.
win. But I think maybe in the UK, I think we like a string of 1s beside our name, and it doesn't necessarily stand up at the festival.
So you mean so are you saying that the DRF then is the result? Just being there and getting that run in is the key.
I think competing, yeah, I think it's a massive thing. Like you don't necessarily have to win. Final Demand is a really interesting runner for Cheltenham, because he was borderline going odds on at one point in a lot of people's mind for the Bound Advisory. Certainly looking at the race, I'm not entirely sure everyone would have been targeting the Bound Advisory, been mad to take on Final Demand, and he's suddenly out to, is it 4 or 5 to 1 at the moment, top of the market. So how do you assess that one? I mean, to me, he wasn't on a going day whatsoever, probably on both his last 2 starts. So is there value elsewhere?
How do you take something like that, a horse like Final? Again, we're talking about snowballs. Mm-hmm. It was a big snowball.
That was a melting snowball.
It was a huge, it was. It snowed the night before. You opened the curtains, and suddenly it was Saharan sunshine. But those snowballs start. What's your opinion on a horse like that now? Again, the snowball's melted. Mm-hmm. So are you starting from scratch again with him, or with a horse like that?
There's not enough data to get a strong opinion, is there?
You know on the day.
The data beforehand, I mean, it looked promising. It was a very good novice hurdler. It looked impressive in its chases, but it hadn't actually beaten a huge amount. There was a lot of hype behind the horse. Now, it could still be a very good horse. Could still, well, as we both know, win that race. But from a betting point of view, things like that make me back off a race, because the more unknowns and intangibles there are, the harder it is. You're betting on was the horse right that day? 1. Number 2, if it wasn't right, is he going to be right on the day? So there's 2 imponderables you've got, and I'd rather everything's healthy, everything's right, plenty of form in the book, may the best horse win. That's when I want to get involved. So races like that, and I've said the Champion Hurdle this year is just a bananas, isn't it? I mean, I don't know where to start. And I've found before, so with Champion Hurdle, Murray, you've got to have a bet, you've got to have an opinion. As I've got older and done this more, I think, no, you don't. Just put it in a box and leave it.
Yeah.
And then open the box again on the day, have a fresh look at it, but don't feel you've got to keep looking at the race, because if I'm spending 3 hours delving around in there, I could more productively be going at the Mare's Chase, for example, where nobody's looking. A Dino Blue is still 3 to 1, it's still 11 to 4, it's still 5 to 2, working away on that, and putting them out, because £100 won on that race is worth just as much to me as £100 in the Champion Hurdle.
So you halfway through the Champion Hurdle, everyone's going, but who's going to win? This is incredible, and you're like,
I don't care.
The Mare's Chase, guys. There's still value in the Mare's Chase.
I think there's certain races though at the moment. If you're looking, for example, for value from a punting perspective, and this is me putting myself in Steve's or Murray's shoes, but like it's like there's certain races that, as you said, putting energy into looking at the Champion Hurdle at the moment. Even Final Demand, just back to him, you'll have a fair idea on the day, if this horse is fancied, and would you be better off in his case waiting and maybe taking something like a 2 to 1, maybe it could go off even shorter, 6 to 4 on the day, as opposed to now where there's a lot of questions. I mean, he did not perform, I think, even at Limerick, and got away with it. So you'll have a fair idea. Look at Gaelic Warrior, for example, Dublin Racing Festival, well beaten. Did he fall or come down in that contest, in that match against Factifile? And the market confidence behind him on the day. And we saw what he done in the Arkle. So
it's very strong on the day, isn't it? Yeah.
So there's certain races I think you can maybe form more of an opinion on the day, as opposed to.
But I mean that's just another race champion. There's too many imponderables, isn't there?
Yeah.
Will Lossymouth run is one of the kick-off. Will the new Lion actually be as good as He might be. You know, every runner you're thinking, well, I'm not sure. You know, probably last year's winner's the only one you can say, I'm pretty sure I know what that's going to do. Will that be enough on the day? I don't know. But races like that, to me, where there's too many doubts, aren't very good
Makes
betting
sense, yeah.
mediums. Aren't
Yeah.
very good. But as much as the temptation is to bet on those races, I would urge people to go and have a look at the Mares Novice Earl, the Mares Chase, the less popular races, because the less attention there is on a race, the more chance you've got of finding value.
What do you want to see at Cheltenham? What's your Cheltenham going to look like? And what are you backing yourself with in terms of the festival? Tell us down below. Thanks for watching.